Hi, I'm Jaden Dimich and I am here with Rachel Roberts and we are interviewing her just about her life, her journey, many modern problems and what it means to be a single mother and what it means to chase your dreams. So to begin with, tell me about yourself.
Okay, so where would you like to start?
What pushed you into teaching?
Okay, what pushed me into teaching? So I grew up in a family which is mainly all educators, particularly my nan's side of the family. So I had a lot of school principals, deputy principals, teachers, but they're all primary school. They all spoke a lot and stuff, and I really respected them, but I sort of didn't know where I wanted to go with that, but I did love the idea of being in education.
What teaching avenue did you go into?
The teaching avenue I went into, so I originally started with the idea of, I knew I didn't want to teach kids. I didn't really care about wanting to teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and I really loved, so I went to the Australian Institute of Music for year 11 and 12. So I love music, I love creative arts, I love being dramatic, and I like the idea of being able to extend on creativity. And I like the idea of being able to tell a story through different intelligences than the obvious ones, especially back when I went to school in the 80s and 90s. So I went into high schooling at first secondary education, and became a music, art, history and English teacher.
Because that's absolutely awesome. I just want to know, why did you choose those subjects as well?
Okay, so I'm just naturally like a creative person, and so like when I went to school, I was always actually, when I went to school with your dad, I was actually always made to feel a little bit, I don't know, like, I don't want to use the word dumb, because I'm obviously definitely not. I've got 5 degrees later. But when you're not a certain intelligence, especially in the 80s and 90s, and then when I learnt that I was intelligent, because I am a creative person and I did love music and I understood music and learning about musical intelligence and creativity, I wanted to be able to extend on that.
Back to when you're growing up, and still right now, intelligence was never linked to creativity.
100%. So intelligence was just if you're really good at maths or really good English, and that was basically it. You could either write an amazing essay or you could construct a bridge with engineering, but the idea of an intelligence being like a creative field was completely left field, and like being creative was a hobby. It wasn't something to pursue necessarily as a career, and even my family were a little bit like that. They were like, oh, she plays music or she plays piano, that's cute. It wasn't something that I was ever overly encouraged to pursue until a little later on in life.
Do you reckon you're very limited actually by what you can teach? Are you even able to be creative as a teacher? We are primarily talking about being an English teacher here, because English is one of my favourite subjects and I want to be the world's greatest author. But tell me, because I feel like many of the teachers are restricted creatively. We have to study a certain text, study this, that, and who really cares? But tell me, do you feel restricted or are you able to be free?
That's a really, really, really good question, and I'm going to say I could answer that twofold.
Okay.
So, yes, you are restricted by the certain text, particularly when you get into the HSC and the subjects selections are, or the book selections, for example, in English are limited, as is the different areas of music, for example, or art, for example, you're allowed to go into. However, within that small scope, you can be as creative as you like as a teacher. So you can encourage your students. So yes, you might have to read Pride and Prejudice, but what aspects of Pride and Prejudice are we going to actually go into? Are we just going to look at it as a text, or could we look at it through characterisation and things like that?
I struggle to even pay attention in class, and I really want to do well in English and math, but it's hard to focus, it's hard to stay engaged in class.
Yep.
But there are some teachers who can do that really, really well. How can you make a classroom engaging?
Very good question. Thank you very much, Jaden. So you're absolutely right. And even as a teacher, sometimes, as we've just spoken about, sometimes having, a really prescribed text that we have to do, and sometimes when you've been a teacher for a very long time, it just feels like you're just repeating yourself and repeating yourself. But to make education engaging, whether you're in kindergarten and all the way through into your adulthood, is knowing your students and how they learn. So having a classroom full of students that might be predominantly perhaps from the boys' year 8, football team, I'm not going to choose like a Pride and Prejudice kind of book. I'm going to choose something like Aussie Rules, where they're going to get into it, but I'm not going to sit there and read it to them. We might just pick out elements. Text is also podcasting. Text is also watching a movie. Text is also unpacking film and understanding that, and actually thinking about, what do I want them to learn out of this? Do I need them to write an essay, or can they verbally tell me on film or verbally via video vlogging or blogging what they understand about characterisation? And so being able to stretch your assessment tools to actually what you're testing instead of what you think you have to test. Does that make sense?
to try to cater your learning to your students, which is a really, really good idea. So teachers, learn this. Stop trying to teach the same boring old trick over and over and over again. And also, there's something I have a gripe, really, I would say. It's with AI. And yeah, I use AI, I know, but that's when I'm not engaged. There are some times I don't use AI when I'm engaged. But I hate when teachers use AI, and I just want to know your entire thoughts on AI in teaching.
Okay, so AI is still pretty new and a little bit raw in the education field at the moment. The first thing teachers do is like AI, but I think it's an amazing tool, and I think that if you can actually teach students to use it constructively is one, a really, really good tool, because we're not going to lose AI, it's just going to keep evolving. So if you keep ignoring the fact that AI exists, then you're actually stopping the field of education moving forward. One, do you want them to use AI? If you don't, then you need to construct a lesson, an assignment, a learning field around something where they can't use it. But if you want them to use it, which I think that they should learn how to use it constructively, teach them how to use it constructively as a learning tool instead of as a tool so they can just type. If you're writing a simple question like, why did Bob run down the road? And then AI can answer that, they're not learning anything. But if it's actually a field of questions where they actually have to research something and AI can give them aspects of where to go down that rabbit hole, then AI is going to help them learn and grow faster. I think we need to embrace and move into AI and embrace technology rather than hate it, because it's not going away.
And I've had this teacher, I'm not going to say names obviously, who used AI for absolutely everything. I'll give you an example. We had to write this story and he said just use AI and memorize the creative piece and put it in your exam, which I'm just going to say AI, it's a tool. Do not use it to write creatively. It doesn't work. Don't use it for anything like that, simply because AI is only going to be average and there's no human element. It doesn't know English techniques that well. It doesn't know how to use a motif properly. It doesn't know how to do proper characterization. Don't use AI. So what are your thoughts on that teacher or teachers who think AI is like the holy grail god?
Well, again, I would never like to disrespect any of my teaching colleagues. However, I do think that it's very new. A lot of schools are told to embrace it and other schools are a little bit scared of what that means. So I think with some teachers, they don't quite know how to use it yet. And I think that once again, it's about asking AI or helping students use AI, because, for example, AI shouldn't be used in creative writing because that's not being creative, because creative writing is about you. But there's also tools that can monitor if that's something that's AI or something that's your own text. So I think that that's really important for students to understand, is that we can actually run an app or a field over something that will be able to dictate whether that, which is AI by the way, that'll be able to dictate whether that's AI or not. So you've got to be quite careful with that. And you can't bring AI into your HSC, guys, so...
True, even though I've done that before and I didn't get caught. Anyway. This one is about learning in general. For me, I learn better, instead of reading books, I learn better writing the book. Do you reckon we should start teaching in that way? Instead of telling us what to do, showing us and making the kids do the actual work. So if we're learning creative writing, we write the actual book and then we practice through that.
Yeah. So I think that once again, sort of like I answered a little bit before, is I think everybody has a different learning style, and it's knowing your students and how they learn. So some students learn better through someone reading to them and then they have to go over it again. Other students are visual learners. Other students are better at if they're physically doing something. And I think it's once again unpacking an assessment or assignment, or knowing what you're assessing a student on, and if it's their understanding on how to construct a chapter or how to write a short story, then it shouldn't matter in what media that they do that in.
Do you have fear that AI could take over teaching? Well, some teachers, yeah, they definitely will when they only use AI.
I don't think so. I think that it may take over some particular elements of everybody's job, to be fair. Education is a part of the humanities, which is a part of humanism, and you can't take humans out of the field of education, because people need care and comfort and nurture and the humanness of what it means to come to school as a community, and I think that AI obviously can't provide that.
Back to that point to where you were talking about how to engage your class, you need to teach at that certain level. What happens if there are 30 students that have each different level that do not join each other at all? How will you tackle that?
Yep, so what we do in education is a thing called differentiation. And so in any class, as a general, there might be students that might be a little bit lower than what we call potentially have your core of your class. And then you'll have students that might be a little bit further along or even gifted and talented, depending on how your school constructs a class. It's your job as a teacher to be able to teach that same subject, that same lesson, that same text to all of those students in that class. And you do that through project-based learning.
You have had some challenges in life. How have you overcome them, and what was your inspiration?
I most definitely have. So when I was 18, I had my first child, and I was told that I would basically that was it. I would at best maybe have a remedial job. And to be honest, Jaden, I actually used that as encouragement. I was told I was never going to go to university. I was never going to necessarily amount to anything. And so I used all of that motivation to prove all of those people, and there were more than one, wrong. It was sort of very much a mindset in the 80s and 90s once you did that kind of thing, and especially being a female. I know that probably sounds crazy to somebody your age, but in your dad's and mine and people my age and down, even though we're quite young at 45, there was just that mindset, even being a female, let alone being a young mum, I was never going to amount to anything. And so I used that drive of being told that I wasn't going to do anything to become something, and now 5 degrees later, here I am.
I actually really, really love that. The form of inspiration is using the haters as a way to inspire you, almost like you're taking their spirit and channeling it into positive spirit.
Absolutely.
That's a reference from my book that you guys won't understand. But anyway, so you're a single mother. Were you a single mother the moment you became a mother? Did he leave straight away, or what happened there?
Pretty close. I think my son was maybe 8 months old. 8, 9 months old, so I was a single mum probably quite young. I actually come from a reasonably well-to-do family, so I actually had no idea what Centrelink was. I didn't know that I could apply for any of these things, so I was working 2 or 3 jobs. I was renting my own house. I had my son going to daycare, and I was paying full price because I had no idea that I could get any of that kind of help. It was really, really challenging, but I have this saying that stuck with me almost my entire life, which is everything seems impossible until it's done.
Speaking of that impossibility thing, here's a quote. The word impossible can just simply be made up into 2 words. I'm possible.
Love that.
Yeah. I also made a video on that, by the way. So yeah. Go check it out. Go through my 600 videos. What were the challenges of being a single mother?
Challenges of being a single mother, okay, and studying as a single mother.
Yeah.
So I was working up to sometimes 2 or 3 jobs, studying full time, and I was actually doing advanced study as well. So I was doing up to 6 university subjects at a time. Wow. Even though I really discouraged it, and I'm kind of joking, but all of my kids were right into sport. So I had all that training. I had to take them to their football and union games and netball games and dancing and all that stuff that I had to go and take my kids to. I was at uni up to 3 days a week, because up until my last degree, I actually went to uni as well. I had a self-run business as a music teacher, and then I also had 2 jobs on top of that as well. So I did swimming instructing, I did job network provider, and so I did lots of different things, and it was an absolute struggle, but at the same time I did it. It's about when I say budgeting yourself, I'm not just talking about money. It's what's important and what time. And I'm going to give you another saying here that my pop gave me: all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So while going to uni was important, and being a great mum to my kids was important, and going to work is important, I actually still managed to find what we now call a third space, some time for myself, even if it was once a fortnight, to be able to sit around with my same age peers, whether that even just be going to my girlfriend's house and watching a movie. Doing that is actually incredibly important for your mental health, and even as busy as I was, I still managed to be able to budget that into my time and space.
CEOs, take note on that. And we're going to talk about hard work right now, because you just said you work 2 to 3 jobs and 6 subjects full time. But tell me, what benefits did you find from working so hard, and what were some of the negative aspects? Would you recommend that hard work to someone else?
Absolutely. So I believe that hard work pays off. As I said, I think you need to be quite equitable with your time. And you have to be purposeful. So you can't just, go and do 20 paper runs or whatever it is. So you have to find a job that has the right money, that fits into your time and life budget. But you also need to make it purposeful for you. So there's no point studying something you don't want or studying something that your parents want you to study, because you'll never be successful at something that other people want you to do, just as you'll never be successful in a job, even if it's a casual job to get you by, that you're not at least somewhat interested in. I enjoyed swimming. Because I was still teaching. So I was still like practicing skills that I knew were going to be transferable into the career that I had chosen. I was teaching, music like at people's houses to students. So again, it was a transferable skill that I was able to transfer into my chosen career. So when I entered a classroom for the first time as a prac teacher, it wasn't brand new to me. I'd already had skills in being able to get disinterested swimming students or disinterested guitar students re-engaged in something. So it was a transferable skill. The negative would be is that, were there days that I was exhausted? Absolutely. Were there days that I just didn't think that I was going to be able to do it again tomorrow? Absolutely. But there's a saying, you're up once your feet hit the floor. And so that's what I did. So I just got up and then you just do it.
What is inspiring you now to do what you're doing? Because you're still haven't stopped. You're an assistant principal, you help all of these kids who are into the special needs, and you're right here doing an interview, which is kind of legendary as well. But what inspires you to keep on going? Why don't you just stop right now? Why don't you just do an easier job that you can still live off right now?
Really great question. So once again, a little bit like I was saying before, you have to find something that's purposeful. And if you find something you enjoy doing, you never work a day in your life. I actually authentically love working, so I'm a behaviour specialist as well. So I authentically love working with behaviour, because behaviour is everything we do. There's a negative connotation attached to behaviour because we think behaviour is naughty. Behaviour is every single thing we do. You're behaving right now. I'm behaving right now. And when we unpack behaviour, even students with additional needs or with additional diagnoses, they just need extra support in being able to analyse themselves, because we have this ability when we have been able to at least somewhat see ourselves and understand how to fit into social construction, so understand how to fit into elements of society. Some people, some students, some kids particularly, and adults, don't understand how to do that, and I'm really, really passionate about supporting people that need additional help in that.
I just thought about it, because you have many, many dark people in history who commit evil things. Do you reckon some humans are born evil?
Yes, I actually do, and a very, very small percentage, but yes, I do. I think there is potentially some people that are born that way, but I'm going to say that in my experience, I've never met anybody like that. That usually it is either hereditary or something that has occurred in their life, like a trauma that's made them that way, and or a diagnosis or an amalgamation of all of those things together.
If we're talking about, let's say, a diagnosis, something completely outside of their control, does that make them evil or misunderstood? Who judges what is evil, what is right or wrong?
Well, I guess as you just sort of said, I guess goes into an ethical question, and it's about, like, everybody has a window of tolerance, or a baseline of behaviour. So what I consider a window of tolerance, a tolerant behaviour, it might be very, very different to yours. So I guess it's subjective. Behaviour is subjective. Window of tolerance is subjective.
Where do you see yourself in 10 to 20 years? And maybe this might happen and you might see this video in 10 to 20 years and you might already have seen it. So this is a time capsule.
I was going to say it's a time capsule.
Where do you see yourself in 10 to 20 years?
Oh, Jaden, great question. Look, I have 2 spaces that I'd like to be in, or 3 spaces that I'd like to be in. So one would be, I would love to be a principal of like a little like community school, perhaps, not necessarily a school for a specific purpose, like a behaviour setting, but like a nice little school, option 1. Option 2, I'd like to go back into the behaviour specialty field, either on my own through NDIS or through the department, because I really, really love profiling behaviour, unpacking behaviour and supporting anybody, including adults, support their behaviour needs. Or I'd actually like to go into my own business just in general, and that could be like still down the education sphere. I love working in the adult academic space at university as well. So I've got a few fingers in the pie. So I actually lecture at university as well in diversity for education and leadership for inclusion. And I actually really, really love that space as well.
What do you reckon the difference is between a dream and a motivation?
Beautiful. Okay, so for me, a dream is something that you can project yourself into. It's something that you'd like to do. and it's something that like you might aspire to. For me, motivation can sometimes have other elements attached to it. So for me, obviously the single mother thing. So motivation might be, I might have wanted to finish my degrees at a regular pace, but because I was a single mum and wanted to hurry that along, my motivation to study more and to work more and to push myself was because I had little ones to look after and I only had me to rely on. Does that make sense? So for my idea is that motivation might come with extra elements. Dream is something that you want to do.
For me, this is so true. When you stray for your dream, you feel empty, you feel lonely, but when you chase your dream, you feel full. You feel like you can conquer the world. You feel like a legend.
As humans, and this is a behaviour thing, as humans, there's only one thing we're actually put on this earth to do, and that is to have purpose. A human without a purpose have no need to continue. And so without being purposeful, which is your dream, a dream provides a purpose and a purpose provides motivation.
Do you reckon some people never find that dream, and what do? Do you reckon they live a mundane life, or can you live a beautiful life without purpose?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that with, I think that once again is a little bit subjective, and that goes back to your family. So I actually come from but on both sides, an incredibly ambitious family. So not being something, or not having an ambition, or not having a dream, or not wanting to make yourself something in life wasn't even something that was spoken about. There was always that, what do you want to be when you grow up? How are we going to get you there? Da, 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 da. I think that some people potentially have families, or unfortunately some people don't have families. Their purpose would just be to have a job, okay? And that's why you need all people in the world, okay? Because some people, their ambition would be, they might come from a history of family that haven't had a job or employment for 4 or 5 generations, and the idea that they get a job at Bunnings and work their way up there is purposeful.
You've mentioned a lot when it comes to finding your dream that we end up going to what our environment for us, which I agree. I also disagree the fact that no one in my life is an author and no one in my life tells stories. I've never read a book as a child. I've never done many of that things, but I've always drawn to storytelling as an idea, so then I chose the medium of writing a book. So what about me, people like me who just are born to do something?
Okay, well, I think that while you're focusing on the fact that potentially that your family weren't so much into literature and you are, but the transferable skill is motivation and passion. And you're from a family that were passionate about careers, passionate about what they did, and pursued what they did. And that's exactly what you're doing too, it's just within a different subject.
What are some problems you have seen from students as a behavioural specialist?
Okay, so I'm an assistant principal in a school for a specific purpose. I can never say that. But I'm also have been a behaviour specialist with the Department of Education. So I guess it's sort of like a twofold. So within my own school, being a behaviour specialist is easier because I get to see them for, up to 5 and 6 hours a day. So I'm able to profile students on a regular basis and I'm able to move with that. So that's a positive. As a behaviour specialist in the department, when you're just a behaviour specialist, you're going into schools for an hour here, once every 2 weeks, and an hour there. And it's really, really hard to form a proper profile and proper strategies with students that you aren't actually engaged with. So you have to rely on the unbiasedness of other teachers and other paraprofessionals to be able to draw a whole picture. And sometimes they may be burnt out. Sometimes they might have cultural indifference about a particular topic. So for example, there might be a student that has certain diagnosis that might also be transgender, and you might have teachers that might come from different cultural or religious backgrounds, but that might have a bias towards that student that isn't authentic, but I'm relying on that teacher or that paraprofessional to provide me with the information that I need as someone who's only there for an hour a fortnight to be able to create a profile. So that's a problem in the field, and the positive in the field is that I'm back at my school now, my support school, and as a behaviour specialist and an assistant principal, I'm able to create my own synopsis on a student more accurately.
What type of behavioural specialist teaching are you? Are you like the mental type or the other type?
Yep, so my school is what we call EDBD, so emotional disturbance and behaviour disorders, which means that like the big umbrella for my kids is that they usually have some kind of trauma background, and trauma could be anything from a war trauma, it could be a trauma from car accident, but a lot of the students that I have unfortunately come from reasonably rough backgrounds in terms of family, their life. A lot of them live in out of home care, which means that they're either fostered or they live in a house, like so housing where there's just other kids and there's no mum or dad or foster carers or whatever, and often that ends up leading to crime often, and they can unfortunately go down that road on occasion. So my school's kindergarten to year 12.
I have a teacher who used to teach at a school. There were a lot of immigrants there, and these immigrants performed really, really, really well. Do you reckon your school has that mindset to where the students want to perform well, they're from a bad background and they want to make themselves a better life? Do you reckon your school has that, or is that just a no?
Oh, look, definitely. Again, it's a little bit subjective. So I think that in the behaviour setting and the emotional disturbance setting is that we definitely try to capture students younger. Because the idea of an SSP setting is that we're able to support their behaviour and teach them the skills that they require, because often, as I said, they either have trauma or a diagnosis, and often both. So when I say both, I mean they might come from a traumaed background, but they also might have, by virtue of the trauma, ADHD or what looks like projected maybe autism spectrum disorder. They might end up with things like picker or Tourette's and other things as a byproduct sometimes, or as well as the trauma that they have. Or we have found that getting the students as soon as possible or as early as possible, so we call it early intervention strategies.
Oh yeah.
Then you're able to, I guess, and our students what we call graduate from our school. And when I say that, they could be 7 when they've come in at 5, and we've taught them the skills that they require to be able to go back to a mainstream setting. But if we don't get students until they're in maybe year 5 or 6 or year 7 or year 8, often those traits have been embedded, if you like, and a lot are, and not impossible, but a lot harder to teach new skills or behaviour skills. So they don't, because often can sometimes lead to crime. Sometimes these kind of students might get targeted out in community to help other people potentially do crimes in community, and they don't always know the difference between right and wrong because of their disability.
Have you only worked in this sort of school? Have you worked in actual schools like a mainstream?
I've definitely worked in mainstream schools. So for the first 9 years, 10 years of my career, I was a high school teacher in the Outback and in the Campbelltown region.
Why behavioural over this? Or would you say it's not, you just chose this because it's interesting?
A little bit of both. I think that I found that in a mainstream setting, I gravitated to the kids that needed additional support, whether it be through behaviour or through their learning, and often those things combined, as you can imagine. I had a few goes at being a year advisor and head teacher of wellbeing. I guess students in both of those additional roles in a mainstream setting, the behaviour kids and the support kids within those settings gravitated to you, and I just found joy as a teacher that I was somebody that those students could come to and help them in the setting and hopefully succeed.
Would you like to ask me any questions?
Absolutely. So Jayden, number one, what got you into the idea of doing podcasting and social media and all that stuff at such a young age?
Something my dad said. him, that's the reason. Nah, it's because I need a following, so I chose social media to build that following. And the reason why I chose podcasting is because of what my uncle said. He said, do street interviews. And I've always wanted to kind of open a podcast, but I never knew how to, but I guess we have. You reached out and you wanted a full long-form interview, and now we're here. A butterfly effect. It all fell in place. I didn't mean for it to happen. Have I wanted to be an influencer since I was a young age? Yes, but was it my dream? No.
Did you, I'm saying this as a teacher, did you or were you concerned that you might get bullied or teased at school for doing something on social media?
No. I forget about that entire thing. I forgot entirely. When I posted my first video, I was like, oh my gosh, I just posted myself in front of the entire school, 2,000 people in less than a day, everyone from my school, but I didn't care. I don't think about fear. Like, I do think about fear, but I don't think about it as much. I just do that. And that is a mindset we should all have. We shouldn't have a mindset to where we're scared of failure. No, because when you're scared of failure, you're just going to fail no matter what. Remember, if you don't ask the question will be no.
So as a teacher, I've noticed that, like, just say you're really, really, really good at something. So it could be like you're a really, really good singer, but you don't want to do it because you're going to get teased for it. Or you might not be very good at something and you might get teased for it. Do you sometimes feel like you get stuck as a teenager in what you can and what you can't do, or what you should or what you shouldn't do, or what you can or what you can't follow?
A lot of people say, I want to start, but I'm scared. And I just say, no one cares, honestly. Something my dad said again, he said to 20, 40, 60 rule, and it is actually true. Yes, there are people who will be mean to you. Yes, there are people who will make fun of you, but no one genuinely cares. When you're age 20, you think everyone cares about you. When you're age 40, you can't focus on anyone else but your family. And age 60, you understand no one actually cares. Think about it. Why would someone go out of the way to make someone else's life hell? That's just cringy. They're not going to do that. And if those people will do it, who cares? Like, you don't even want to impress those people. So stop trying to impress every single person, because it won't work. Instead, the only person you really need to seek validation from is God.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask those couple of questions because I often can't ask my students those questions because, but I like asking someone as intelligent as yourself, and you're very articulate, so thank you.
What is one thing you would like to say to the audience to help chase their dreams?
Don't be scared to chase your dreams, but definitely go to it with a plan. You can do these things called SMART goals, and so they're basically taking things into small chunks and creating a plan, because you're likely to be far more successful if you at least have a plan in mind. Now, that doesn't mean you can't deviate from the plan, and most often you do deviate from your plan, but I would most definitely say don't be scared to chase your dreams. Break it down into achievable increments and just keep going.
The amount of times I've deviated from the chapter outline in my story is insane. But nice to meet you, Rachel Robert.
Nice to meet you.
And hopefully this video goes viral. And maybe we might do a part 2 interview. Depends on how the world goes. Did you enjoy this?
I absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
And thank you for being my first interviewee.
Yes.
Interviewee.